Great, thank you everybody for such a warm welcome, and it's lovely to be here again at another conference. And at the last conference just in Bournemouth, one of the main points that I made is that our education system is in many ways not giving our young people all of the skills that they need to be a success in this country. And one particular example was in medicine. Last year, there were only 8,000 places to study medicine at British universities, but nearly 80,000 applicants. Far too much talent in this country is wasted. And then to bridge the skills gap that we've created, we trawl the world to find doctors from other countries and bring them here, which is wrong. So I was quite amazed when a couple of weeks later I switched on my television to watch the news, and there was the Health Secretary, Jeremy Hunt, making a big announcement on government policy. And what he said was, we're not training enough British doctors in this country, we need to stop trawling the world and bringing doctors from other countries and train more doctors here. But you heard it here first, I think. As so often is the case, Ukip are leading the way and other parties copy what we're doing. But not everybody believes me. So today I'm going to do a little experiment, and I'm going to start talking about something that I know that no one else is talking about. And we can see if in a few weeks or months' time everyone else is talking about it, you know that you heard it here first. And what that is something I call the demographic bulge. Now, that's a bit technical, I will explain. In secondary schools at the moment, the year groups from about 12 to 17 are quite small. But in primary schools, the year groups from 5 to 9-year-olds are much, much bigger, which is one of the reasons why primary schools are overcrowded at the moment. In 2 years' time, that demographic bulge is going to hit secondary schools and is going to work through over the next 5 years. That means that we will need to create about 500,000 extra secondary school places. Not many people are talking about it and not many people are planning for it, but if we don't plan for it, it could be a looming disaster. But I see an opportunity. Now, I shall explain that too. It's no secret that Ukip supports grammar schools, and rightly so, because when we had them all over the country, they provided the greatest level of social mobility the world has ever seen. And the Labour Party actually does support grammar schools, not in what they say, but in what they do. And if we consider Labour's finest, let's think about Diane Abbott. Well, she sent her kids to not a grammar school, but a private school. Emily Thornberry, another one of Labour's finest, sent her kids to a grammar school, as did Harriet Harman with her son, and Jeremy Corbyn went to a grammar school as well. Well, I think grammar schools should not just be some things that give opportunities to the leadership of the Labour Party, but should give them to all academically talented people across the country. Thank you. Now, because we're going to need so many extra secondary school places over the next few years, that does provide an opportunity, because we will need to build hundreds of new secondary schools. And I say that at least half of the new secondary schools that we build and open should be grammar schools, so that we can actually get a grammar school in every town and city across the country. Now, we also need far more technical schools as well to teach vocational qualifications and apprenticeships, an area which has been neglected for far too long. University technical colleges were considered as an answer to this, but they didn't take off for two reasons. One is because they found it hard to recruit people at the age of 14. But with the demographic bulge moving through, the leading edge of that is going to be at 14-year-olds in 5 years' time. Education sometimes needs long-range planning, and perhaps if we stick with that model, then they will be well placed to provide technical education over the long term as well, which is something that we need. We also need unbiased careers advice for all school children. And the state of careers advice is quite shocking in this country, and it's unbelievable that it is so shocking in 2017. In some places it's good, but in some places, whole areas, it's non-existent. How can young people know of all the opportunities that are out there in apprenticeships, in technical education, when they don't have good careers advice? And that is something that we need to make sure that every young person from the age of 13 gets, so that they can achieve all that they can be. Now, let's talk about universities. And our universities, of course, are some of the finest in the world, and they are fantastic places if you're the right person to go there. But for many people, they're not the right places to go to, and they're still stuck with Tony Blair's target seemingly pulled out of the air of saying that we have to get 50% of school leavers to university. That's the wrong thing. For many young people, they would be better off doing a higher apprenticeship and learning a trade than going to university. And that is why it's so essential that they all have really good, thorough, independent, unbiased careers advice from a very young age, so that they can process all of the information about what's the best place for them. Some careers which were not previously graduate-only careers have been made that in the last small period of time. Nursing, for example, is now a graduate-only career, which is nonsense. It would be better to have it as a non-graduate, on-the-job vocational training for nurses. This will get far more young talent into that profession earlier, it will save the taxpayers money, and it will stop us having to trawl the world for nurses from other countries to fill a wholly unnecessary skills gap. And soon policing is to become a graduate-only profession. That is also nonsense. Since policing began in this country, police could go to police training academies, which teaches them all they need to know from 18. It's a nonsense to make it a graduate-only profession. It stops people from 18 to 21 becoming police, and then also creates another unnecessary skills gap. Now, universities should be made lean and mean and concentrate on high-value academic subjects. They also need to be places which open the mind rather than close the mind. And it's quite disturbing in the last few years how free speech has been curtailed in universities. The growth of no platforming has seen speakers as diverse as Peter Tatchell, Germaine Greer and Ayaan Hirsi Ali not being allowed to share their ideas at universities. This is absolutely wrong. We have made a generation with far too many adult crybabies who need to go and run to their safe spaces whenever they hear an idea that slightly contradicts their worldview. It's absolute madness. There should be no safe spaces at university, and if you're not mature enough to hear an idea that you don't agree with without responding in a mature manner, you shouldn't be at university. But on the other hand, in our schools, ideas which were considered fringe and are aggressively politically correct are being peddled. Who would have thought that 5 years ago a book would go out to primary schools advising them not to use the words boys or girls or mothers or fathers because that was politically incorrect? Isn't that madness? Who would have thought that it would be politically incorrect to say that there are two biological sexes determined at birth and coded in your chromosomes? The politically correct view now is that there are 47 genders and you choose one of them on a moment-by-moment basis in a multi-dimensional gender-fluid space. Now, I'm not quite sure what that means, but it's not something that even the monster-raving loony party thought up. We need to restore sanity to our schools, and a lot of these fringe ideas are coming through the citizenship syllabus. That needs a total overhaul. Now, some of the things about it are good. Children need to be taught about political processes and democracy. But things that the references to difference, diversity and multiculturalism that allow fringe ideas and politically correct nonsense into our schools should be removed from the syllabus. Now, sex and relationship education should also remain non-compulsory with a full parental veto over it. Age-appropriate sex education can be very good and beneficial in secondary schools if it's done well. But some of the stuff that I have seen, which has been targeted at 7-year-olds in primary schools, are things that you wouldn't take home in a brown paper bag. And honestly, if parents saw some of the materials that I've seen, they would be shocked. It's actually quite wicked, and it shouldn't be allowed.
David, we're over time now, David.
Can I do one more paragraph? Okay. On the other hand, there's never been a greater need for high-quality, academically rigorous religious education of the type provided by our church schools. And let's remember that 97% of faith schools in this country are church schools, and 1/3 of all state schools are church schools, and they've been doing a fantastic job of education in this country for centuries. To increase the esteem of what they do, I would include religious education alongside geography and history as an eligible subject for the English Baccalaureate, the main measure of academic achievement at 16. Now, without Ukip, we would not be standing on the brink of freedom from the European Union. There are many challenges still to overcome in our education system, but Ukip is on the ball, and what we will do is create an education system where no child is held back, an education system which, once again, is truly world-class in every area. Thank you.